Hi guys, this is a quick video on Sylvia Plath which was requested. If you would like my videos on some of her poems, then you can catch them on my website www.staceyray.co.uk. You can also catch me on Instagram at staceyray. This will be short and sweet. As I say, it's just to give you some background on Sylvia Plath and some ideas. First of all, we can't avoid the fact that Sylvia Plath was actually diagnosed as clinically depressed, and she explores that in her work, particularly The Bell Jar, and you can see that in her language. It is brutal and it's brutally honest, and I suppose that's why posthumously she became so famous. Her father died when she was 8, so she kind of experienced trauma from a young age, and trauma is a key word when we are writing about, studying and analysing Sylvia Plath, because she explores trauma through her poetry and through her writing. She goes to an internship when she's younger, and this is where the bell jar comes from, and she criticises these fashion parties of sometimes the upper class society, if you like. And the reason it's called the bell jar is obviously because, the metaphorical reason of her feeling like she was seeing things through this type of trapped environment, if you like, and feeling very stifled, wasn't she? She goes on to attempt suicide at quite an early age, is unsuccessful. She then graduates. She meets Ted Hughes, and obviously they fall in love with each other. However, Ted Hughes is unfaithful and he has an affair, and after that she attempts suicide again at the age of 30 and is successful. So a lot of her poetry was published posthumously and became quite and is so famous. And the things she has experienced in her life, the depression, the trauma, her husband's affair, actually are the backbone for a lot of her writing. She is what we call a poet from the confessional school of poetry. So the very word confessional tells you that she isn't going to hold back when she's talking about darkness and when she's revealing darkness. And she's very good with this language that is so brutally honest. I particularly enjoy her use of colour to express various things like the darkness, the colour blue, the colour white. She is often described as a feminist poet. I mean, there's much more to Sylvia Plath than that, but she is described as a feminist poet. And one of the critics describes her as a brutal poet as well. And she promotes womanhood as well as day-to-day experiences. So, you know, the poem The Cut, where she cuts her finger, she relays these day-to-day experiences so that the reader becomes a witness, and so that it makes the poems easier to relate to on our behalf. She is honest about, as I say, trauma. She's honest about sexuality. She is honest with her own frustration, and she expresses that. Her works obviously are slightly different. So what's great about Colossus, okay, her work Colossus, is that section where she talks about feeling nothingness, and she compares that to the colour white. And as I said about colours there, because then in Ariel we're going to get darkness, aren't we? This idea of feeling nothingness is a link into this depressed woman, this woman who's trying to overcome trauma, this woman whose husband's had an affair. And I just love that reference, the feeling of nothingness linked to the colour white, because again, the colour white we would normally in literature associate with innocence. She kind of gives it an almost new meaning there. Ariel then, she is honest with pain, the theme of pain really, isn't it? And she explores darkness, okay? So I've said that, it's the opening line, isn't it, of the poem. And she says in Lady Lazarus, so Lady Lazarus is a fantastic poem, isn't it? That dying is an art. I do it so it feels real. Now, obviously that is autobiographical, isn't it? Because the amount of times that Sylvia Plath did actually attempt suicide. She also says, out of the ash I rise with red hair, and she talks about eating the men. So it's not only an exploration of suicide, but it's also an exploration of survival. And we have that wonderful image of the red hair. It's almost like, well, it is the phoenix rising, isn't it? She's talking about Lazarus that Jesus raised from the dead, and she kind of parallel links herself to that, doesn't she? she also talks about combining the joyous positive with the despairing negative. So we have got this juxtaposition of emotions, and it's almost like a woman who is a little bit conflicted and a little bit lost, isn't she? And she says that in her journal. So that's directly from her. So if you are studying the works of Sylvia Plath, then actually have a look at what she said in her own journal, because again, it gives you that wonderful either start to an essay or something you can embed in your essay as you analyse the works, whether it be the bell jar or the poems. That being said, if you're studying the poems, absolutely look for key references from the bell jar that also feeds her key themes and her key ideas. The bell jar, obviously, we see that the character Esther is depressive. So again, where that autobiographical link comes is actually from Sylvia Plath's own dealings, her own experiences there. As I say, this was just something quick about Sylvia Plath. What I would take from this is obviously when she talks about feeling nothingness from the confessional school of poetry, she was diagnosed as clinically depressed, and that is what we draw from her work, isn't it? It's probably way too one-dimensional and too easy just to go down the route that Sylvia Plath's quite depressive and sad, because she does quite a lot in her works. Absolutely, if you are studying Sylvia Plath, get a look at all of her works. Get Colossus, get Ariel, get the bell jar, and see what you can draw from all of these works. Look at her language that is brutally honest. Look at her imagery, her metaphor, and how she interweaves day-to-day experiences there. All right, this was just something quick on Sylvia Plath. Catch me on Instagram at Stacey Ray or my website, and massive good luck, guys.